The meeting of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Herndon and Director Jackson have asked to be excused this evening. Director Reza,
Here.
Director Zomber,
Present.
and Chair O'Halloran.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being conducted from the Central Services Building. This meeting is also broadcast on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the Meetings, Agendas, and Minutes page of the MPS website. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si deseas escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Otra vez, 312-626-6799. Introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
Thank you. For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it to our Secretary, Dr. Owen Moore. Just as a note, we have no virtual speakers registered for tonight's committee meeting. For the sake of fairness tonight and to give everyone a chance to speak, the Chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. And now, given that our focus this year is literacy, we have some help with our messages from one of our youngest readers. Jameson is a first grader at Fernwood Montessori School.
Welcome to tonight's committee meeting. The committee will accept public comments on tonight's agenda items. Speakers may only address the item for which they have registered. Questions from the public may not be answered during the public comment period. Following public comment, the committee will begin its discussion and no additional comments will be accepted. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. Like this, Tamika Jones, Jones. Written testimony will also be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071. Or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictates that all comments, questions, or requests should be directed to the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. Also, no one other than the members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to participate in items of business. will be allowed on stage before, during, or after the meetings of the board and its committees. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page of the MPS website.
Thank you, Jameson. If you have a child that would like to read for the board meeting, send a message to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Tonight, we will be starting something new with this committee. We have a number of items that come each month as routine matters that we will be listing under a consent agenda. We will have one public comment period on consent agenda matters. After the public comment period, if board members wish to ask questions or comment on specific items, they may set those items aside for separate discussion by the board. No additional public comments will be accepted. Any items that are not set aside will be approved with one motion. Using this new format, we will not have formal presentations on consent agenda items. The administration has asked for item number 5 on the exception to bid contracts to be set aside. Aside from that item, Madam Superintendent, do you have anything from the consent agenda that you wish to comment on?
Chair O'Halloran and members of the committee, I do not.
Okay. Madam Secretary, do any members of the public wish to comment on consent agenda items?
We have no speaker slips.
Okay. So given that description, are there any items on the consent agenda that board members wish to set aside? Director Zombor?
May I set aside item number 6, action on monthly facilities matters?
Okay. Director Reza? Okay, also number 6? All right. Then may I please have a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda items? Director Zombor?
I move to approve the balance of the agenda items.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda items, Director Reza?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
And Chair O'Halloran.
Aye.
That's 3 ayes, the motion passes.
Before we move on, the chair would like to congratulate all the candidates slated for appointment, promotion, or transfer. We celebrate this important step in your career journey and appreciate your commitment to serving Milwaukee Public Schools. Madam Secretary, what is the next item of business?
Madam Chair, the first item set aside is item 5, action on the award of exception to bid contracts. The recommendation is that the board authorize the exception to bid contracts as set forth in the attachments to this item. This item was set aside by the administration.
Thank you. Would the administration please present this item?
Chair O'Halloran and members of the committee, Brenda Caselli, Superintendent. At this time, the administration is requesting that the Honest Game contract be pulled from the consideration. Additionally, we'd like to add the Ever-Driven Technologies and Collaborative Student Transportation contracts, which are necessary to utilize our human service vehicles. These vehicles are intended to support transportation for unhoused students, helping to ensure they can access school, receive the educational services that they need, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding these items.
Do board members have any questions or comments about either of these items? No? Office of Accountability and Efficiency, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran. With respect to the purchase of these vehicles that we are now leasing, my understanding is that they were purchased via ESSER funds, and I just wanted to make sure that we have some confidence that the adequate support and the appropriateness of that purchase before we engage in any leasing of those vehicles.
Administration?
Chair O'Halloran and Mr. Chason and members, I will have Janine Adamczyk speak to that.
Chair O'Halloran, members of the committee, Mr. Jason, yes, we have ensured that we have everything aligned properly so that we can move forward with these vehicles.
Okay. Any follow-up? Looks like none. All right, what is the pleasure of the committee with respect to this item? Director Zombor.
I move approve, we're just on item 5, right? We're just, okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure before.
It's a new format, so we're all getting to know it, and I appreciate the question for clarity for everybody's sake, so.
I move approval of the administration's recommendation to authorize the exception to bid contracts as set forth in item 5.
Perfect. Is there any further discussion?
Jill's
Also-
whispering, did I
Just
do
kidding.
something wrong?
Perhaps it was not perfect. That may have been a bit hasty. Office of Board Governance, would you like to correct us? Or have any recommendations on how to perfect our motion?
Is that inclusive of the transportation contract and withdrawing the Honest Game contract from consideration?
Yes.
All right. Now, do we have adequate clarity on the motion before us?
All items in item 5.
Okay.
All of the attached items.
I love that we can co-create. Okay. So, there being no further discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the administration's recommendation with regards to exception to bid requests inclusive of the contracts with the transportation companies and while pulling the Honest Game contract. Director Reza.
Aye.
Director Zomber.
Aye.
Chair O'Halloran.
Aye.
That's 3 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the next item for discussion?
Madam Chair, the next item set aside was item 6, monthly facilities matters.
This item was set aside by Director Zombor, so I'm just going to turn it over to Director Zombor to start your question or comment.
So I have a couple questions in it's not technically one of the exception to bid contracts that we're approving, but it's a report of an exception to bid contract that was an emergency contract. So when you open up the actual packet at the bottom, it says that it's a contract to Performance Clean LLC to provide cleaning services for all MPS sites. It is $5 million, and the term is August 30th, 25 through August 29th of 26. Do we anticipate any more emergency contracts coming forward for the cleaning, or are we going to be back to our regular cycle?
Administration, and just for clarity, although you said exception to bid, it is on item number 6, so.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a report of an exception to bid in
Okay,
item 6.
got it.
Because I think we don't have to approve it with sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. Just trying to make sure we're all on the same page. Administration?
Chair O'Halloran, Director Zombor, as we were clearing up the lead this summer, as you know, we had the flood emergency and we had a heating problems, and we had to rush at the last minute. We also did the extra swabbing in our schools that caused us to have some over expenses with the cleaning that we had to do because we had to do a secondary clean. So that's where these costs came from. We do not anticipate with the moving forward that we will have additional costs, at least not to this level. There will be costs additional with the additional 50 schools we're going to do before the end of the year, but we don't anticipate any over costs like this one.
Thank you. Do you have follow-up, Director Zombor?
I do have another question on this contract. So in the contract, it looks like the original contract was entered in October of 2022. And it does mention, our procurement policies, there is a requirement, I believe, that we have to pay employees a living wage that comply with the City of Milwaukee ordinance. That ordinance changed, we entered into this contract March of 22. That living wage ordinance changed October 8th of 22. So I just want to make sure, because the wages that I see in the attachment on the contract look very low to me. Some of them, many of them are below $15 an hour. So I want to make sure that if the contract this emergency contract extension is not in compliance with the ordinance or board policy, that we're making sure we're getting it up to compliance so that we're paying a living wage per our policies.
Administration?
Director O'Halloran and Director Zambor, I'm uncertain. I don't know if you have the living wage, Michelle, or if you don't, then we can get back to you, but we can assure it moving forward that we will comply with policy.
Okay.
I think that Director Zambor is nodding her head, so I believe that having noted her concerns and the assurance that we will comply with the living wage, I think this is sufficient. So, given the discussion, do we have a motion on this item then? Director Zambor.
I move approval of the attached professional services contracts, equipment purchase, and emergency contract that will be executed.
Before I declare that as a perfect motion, I'm going to look over our parliamentarians. And I'm seeing a nodding of the head, so I think we have a clean motion on the floor for consideration. Any other comments or questions? Given none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Zomber's motion to approve the administration's recommendation regarding the attached professional services contracts, equipment purchase, and emergency contract. Director Reza?
Aye.
Director Zomber?
Aye.
Chair O'Halloran?
Aye.
That's 3 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, what is the next item of business?
Madam Chair, we are now back to the remainder of the agenda. The next item is a report on Code of Ethics development and next steps by Rumpf and Associates. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the administration please present the item?
Chair O'Halloran and members of the committee, Brenda Caselli is superintendent. To support the district's ongoing efforts to foster a more competent and caring and accountable organizational culture, the administration engaged Rumpf and Associates to lead the development of a comprehensive code of ethics plan. This evening, joining me from Rumpf and Associates is Mr. Ken Edwards. Mr. Edwards and his team have assessed our current structures, gathered input, and identified focus areas that will guide the creation of an ethics plan. Mr. Edwards will present the findings from this initial phase of work to the board, marking a significant step toward building a stronger, more transparent, and value-driven workplace culture. Now, without further delay, I will turn over to Mr. Edwards. Following his presentation, we'll both be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Good evening. Chair O'Halloran, other board members, staff members, and those in attendance. On behalf of Rumpf and Associates, we'd like to thank you, one, for having involved us in this effort to move MPS forward and deal with some of the prior issues that were out there. In that regard, we were tasked with looking at the Code of Ethics, putting together actually a more comprehensive Code of Ethics, and building training sessions around that Code of Ethics for implementation at some point. So this evening, when we looked at this, we, as a base starting point, talked about what ethics are. And so you guys are familiar, our premise is that ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. And so that's the basis and premises for starting with ethics within the Code of Ethics. This evening, we're going to talk a little bit about our key findings, recommendations, some of the elements of an updated Code of Ethics, then a conclusion and a Q&A session. And I want to premise this by saying that you had a Code of Ethics in play. It was just in about 5 different sections. And so what we tried to do is make one comprehensive area where the Code of Ethics would reside. So I'm going to apologize for the small writing. Hope you guys can read it. Currently, MPS, as we said, does have an existing code of ethics. They're in 4 administrative procedures and one other section of the employee handbook. The current administration procedures focus, however, only on prohibited behaviors and investigations, and so it becomes, in that situation, reactive versus proactive. And so what we looked at, and we utilized your whistleblower policy that was in your current employee handbook, which again just focused on one area. The effects of it is that the code of ethics obviously is not in one sole policy. There also were not one sole series of procedures. The current code of ethics, as we said, does not enhance employees' decision-making on ethical behavior. And actually, what we found is there's no place for employees to go to seek help with questions as regards and guidance if they have questions as regard possible code violations. So one of the things we're looking at from a recommendation standpoint is obviously developing a comprehensive code of ethics that covers, at a minimum, your administration, code administration, employee decision-making framework, who to call with questions, and annual training that is not happening in I guess, in a timely fashion, and how often the employee should get the code refresher training. So we're going to talk about some of the elements of an updated code of ethics. And it starts with the core ethical principles. We identified, I guess, 6 elements to the code of ethics that we based what we were proposing in our work on. And that, again, is the core ethical principles, implementation and evaluation of standards and professional conduct. We looked at addressing misconduct and disciplinary actions, managing the code, tone at the top, and board and senior management responsibilities. And it's all going to be premised on know the code, live the code. And so you'll hear that going forward a lot. That mantra would be taken up by Superintendent Casellia, so we can't claim rights to it. Let's look at the core ethical principles. Okay, the core ethical principle is trust. Okay, a trust as a valuable asset. It's crucial to our organization, and trust has to be maintained and grown like any other financial resource. We saw some breakdowns in the trust structure today, so that's something that we're going to have to work to reestablish. Living ethical values. The MPS Code of Ethics guides employees and stakeholders in embodying certain organizational values through their ethical behavior. When we hire folks here, MPS, and other places, you hire them under the premise that you're hiring ethical people. And so that if the ethics are in place and they learn them and adopt them, then they will live them. Right now, in the absence of unified place, then like anything else in life, you begin to create a diversion from what's really anticipated, and you have no guidance on how to navigate yourself back. So we recognize that the expectation is that everyone is ethical. We also recognize that there's human imperfection. Okay, so we acknowledge, if you will, the human biases and imperfections, and we're going to help address those challenges in maintaining ethical standards. And then there's a commitment to community service involved in core ethical principles. Employees and stakeholders are encouraged to overcome challenges to serve the community effectively. And what you guys live it every day, you have eyes on you. Everybody seems to watch what you're doing in MPS, so any misstep can be magnified, if you will, and the way it goes, most people will magnify it. Implementation and evaluation of standards of adherence, if you will. Allocation of resources, evaluation of adherence to those. We started with setting standards. we have to start with setting standards for behavior. Standards that everyone will have access to. Everyone will be expected to adhere to these standards. And so they're evaluating adherence to the standards of conduct, maintain ethical and professional, if you will, practices. And so everyone's going to act on the same page. There will be ethics training, providing for new employees initial training, so that allows the new employees to establish a foundation of what's expected. Every employee is going to be required to attend training annually, and every employee will be asked to attest to the fact that they've gone through this training. And then what will happen is we'll see an ongoing evaluation and improvement around the standards that will need to be continued to be followed. And the desire is that it improves overall accountability. Addressing misconduct and disciplinary actions. This is kind of tough because if not handled, it leads to missteps on what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, the behaviors around what happens when there are misconduct, and we identify that, really identify it, not the miscellaneous things that are ultimately resolved. So how do we deal with this? The first thing we do is we ensure timely response. So if someone goes to the whistleblower hotline, something has to be in place that says within whatever time frame we identify, it will have to be addressed within that time frame, because that's what we owe our employees. So that code issues are addressed promptly. There's a investigation process that's thorough and leads to resolution of an alleged, because not all things that are identified are actual. Some are just alleged misconduct, and some of that goes back to just not understanding, and if they have questions, who do we go to? Some of this can be resolved before it gets to an actual filing, if you will. Then there has to be, obviously, consistent disciplinary actions for the same, if you will, transgression. Okay? You can't, in certain situations, we have, as a group, handled the same discretions differently. And so that has to be eliminated. And we're going to do that by strengthening the control environment around this that helps to deter future violations, really. And then, as we said, there has to be consistent penalties. So managing the code, okay? Managing the code is going to come from several angles. One is an ethics committee. We're advocating that you create an ethics committee that's responsible, if you will, for administering the code in an independent and objective manner. The committee is going to be made up of MPS leaders who enforce the code, and it's overseen by the AFP committee of the Board of Directors. What we're also discussing is the implementation of what we call LEOs, local ethics officers. Okay, and the LEO is the local enforcer, if you will, of the Code of Ethics. It's a resource, though, for our employees. Okay, if they have questions and they want to raise a concern, they have an LOE they can go to as an option to right now just creating a whistleblower complaint. And then there are going to be some online tools that we have established that we will use to help the local ethics officer with violations, and also if questions come up and they can't answer it, there's always got to be somewhere they can go to as well to get the right answer, so that our employees of MPS get the the resource and the answers they need. So we'll call it a LEO, Local Ethics Office Hotline, okay? And that will be managed independently. And so what it takes, we hope what it takes away is a lot of the fear, if you will, just to come forward with things that people see and ask questions. And in these situations, you'll probably see an uptick, if you will, initially, because people will be empowered to talk, probably in a way that they haven't been able to talk before. But over time, that will come down because what they'll see are the right things to ask, and certain things that really, they shouldn't be asking, that they're doing right now. We hope that will, a byproduct of this is that will go away. So, tone at the top. That's where it all starts, okay? So you guys are the top. You set the tone. The code is MPS's moral compass. It has to be adopted by all senior management, by the board, and then our employees. And the behavior in senior management, if you will, because people are always looking at you, have to embody the code. So we go back to know the code, live the code, but all eyes are on you. And it's if you have kids, it's kind of like, do what I say, not what you see. And so in this situation, it's opposite. We want you to be the representative that they see and that they begin to live that. And when we say audio matches the video, just that thing. Words and actions should say the same thing. Okay? Good ethics are obviously good business. Senior management stresses this point. You model the behavior of doing what is right, even when it's not popular or it's tough to do that. You still have to do what is right, and you're the lead in doing that. And the question we ask is, will our behavior pass the test? Okay, and that's the question you have to ask yourself. And what we mean by that, the test in our situation, and we've seen, is how will it look if our behavior is on the front page of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel? Given MPS's role, this extends way past the workplace as well. So you just don't get to know the code and live the code from 8 to 3 or 9 to 5, whatever it is. There's an obligation that extends beyond the normal workday. And then there's an accountability, obviously, that you're communicating and modeling the accountability to the code, to each other. Okay? You don't have to have a whistleblower scenario before you pull someone aside. Okay? In certain situations, that's a better scenario than filing whistleblower complaints or complaints, stuff like that. We'd like to believe that as we grow at MPS and as we develop a behavior of we have each other's backs, not that we're out for each other, but we truly have each other's backs, we'll begin to see improvement from that standpoint too, because people will begin to talk, and they'll ask, you guys will talk amongst yourself. I have this situation, and you sometimes will be able to deal with that in a better, and get to a better resolve than having it surprise you, because this is designed to eliminate a lot of the surprises that unfortunately continue to happen. So what's the board and senior management responsibilities? As we say, know the code, live the code. Ethics and behavioral expectations. You're going to discuss clear ethics and behavioral standards that are going to guide the workplace. Okay? You're always going to be on the front with that. The standards that we have put together on behalf of MPS will be included as part of the performance management and as part of compensation, because you need buy-in, obviously, to ensure that the policies and the standards are lived up to. And so the policy inclusion will incorporate ethics, behavioral expectations. We'll put that into written policies, which we've done, to ensure clarity and accountability. Also, a culture of continuous improvement. It's not a one-time scenario. We'll get better at this as we go. And we've seen in situations where we've done code of ethics, and a year later, we've had to make substantial changes to the code just because it's not static, it's dynamic. And you want to make sure that whatever's in place is appropriate for the workplace. Personnel notification. We're going to notify all employees about ethical expectations, obtain signatures during their training, confirming their understanding. And so there should be no situations where the comment back to you is, well, we didn't know. And then again, acting ethically. We're going to evaluate actions based on legality, public perception, and above all, transparency to uphold the ethical standards. Again, nothing that we're trying to do is going to be behind closed doors. Establishing standards of conduct, expectations, board responsibilities. The governing board's going to set clear expectations through this code of ethics to guide employee behavior. You guys, within the standards, with our help, will define right and wrong. Our standards established will be around what is considered right and wrong, aligned with the laws of the land and our organizational values. There will be stakeholder expectations. Our standards reflect laws and stakeholder expectations to ensure that, again, we're building trust and affecting compliance. And then the broad understanding here is that ethical standards must be understood, again, by all employees, partners, outsourced service providers. Everyone has to fall in line with what the core standards are for MPS. So just to sum up, if you will, in conclusion, what you're going to see in this process is a continuous improvement. A strong code of ethics is rooted in trust that has to be earned and forms the base for our organizational integrity and accountability. Integration into performance management will be a byproduct of the continuous improvement period that we'll see. And leadership responsibilities, as we said, tone at the top, clear leadership roles are vital and important to guiding ethical behavior and fostering an ethical culture. MPS has a ways to go to get there, candidly, but you're on the right path. We saw that from the time we did the initial whistleblower review months ago to where you're at now, and some of the people you've brought in, and we're excited for you and your excitement. We think you have some great hires that have already happened, and so what will be new is getting people to work together and doing it all under one roof and not under separate silos. I guess it's the easiest way to say that. So implementation and discipline, effective enforcement is going to be necessary, and disciplinary actions when you don't see that enforcement will also be necessary, so that the standards will come to not only lead and guide MPS, but our employees will also know that we live and die with those standards and code as well. So we think that the time is right to roll out under MPS Dr. Casilius in her role, and just ensuring that she has all the support that she needs to build MPS into the strong organization that you guys are trying to make it. Okay? Any questions?
Thank you, administration. I don't see any members of the public, so we have no speaker slips. Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Okay, well, I'll start with Director Sambor, and then we can go to Office of Accountability and Efficiency.
Let Matt go first.
JK, LOL.
because he might,
Office of
ask
Accountability and
some
Efficiency.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran, Matt Chason, OAE. One of the most recently revised policies in front of the board was a contractor code of conduct. And you had mentioned, I believe it was in the previous slide with respect to stakeholders, I think externals. And I wasn't sure if part of the inputs into what was developed here was that contractor code of conduct, or if perhaps it made sense that that stayed separate as not an employee body. I just wasn't sure maybe where that had landed.
Administration?
So the outside contractors will be included in the one code of ethics. There's not a separate code of ethics for employees and outside contractors. One code of ethics for MPS, and anyone who's doing business with MPS will abide by that code of ethics as well.
Follow-up? Okay. Thank you. Director Zambor,
Matt did not ask my question.
hit us with a new one.
So I have, I guess, maybe a couple of questions, trying to understand a little bit more about the ethics committee that you mentioned and then the hotline. Can you remind me, did you say the ethics committee be staffed by MPS employees?
Administration?
So, yeah, what we're advocating is that the committee would be members of the MPS, not community, but the MPS staff. Senior management probably is where most of that will come from. But it's not, and it's a committee that reports up. It's not a committee that stands alone, unsupervised, if you will. We haven't yet determined where that goes, but with 10,000 employees, we know that you need to have an ethics committee that will buy into creating a different culture than currently exists.
Okay, and then the hotline, who would manage the hotline?
I'm sorry.
Which staff would manage the hotline?
The hotline will probably be managed, right now, we're thinking independently under the LEOs and the Office of Ethics.
But that reports to the superintendent, so it would be an administrative.
It'd be administrative.
But how is that independent?
Well, it depends. So let's go back. It's independent in that what we're advocating right now is that be outsourced to maybe, I'm going to make up, even like a Rumpf & Associates,
Okay.
who would act as your independent overseer for that until you develop more specificity, I guess, in-house as to how that would work.
Okay,
Director Zambor?
sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
And then how do you see the hotline? Do you see the hotline, I just want to be clear about what we're going to be seeing in a proposed policy or ethics, code of ethics or proposal. Do you see the hotline replacing the whistleblower hotline? Or is this in addition to it and they're separate hotlines for different types of concerns?
Administration?
So it is separate from the whistleblower. I think the whistleblower is a good scenario that you have anyway, and that needs to stay in place.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think I like the idea of an ethics committee. Little nervous about it being staffed by members of administration, and struggling to see how that would be independent, or I guess I'd be open to hearing other scenarios of like how that could be structured, but definitely like the idea of an ethics committee.
Administration?
Chair O'Halloran, Director Zambor, the way that I see this working within the structure that is existing already is that this is more of the continuous improvement internal function of the administration and holding itself accountable to the highest standards of ethics. This is dealing with the human imperfection part of the work, where it's not a got you or a fear of retaliation type of culture. It's more of a culture of continuous improvement. I think I've been talking about this since I came very publicly in that, and it was found in the organizational operational audit from the governor. And I think that one of the really important pieces that are pulled out in this presentation today and in the findings is that, we make mistakes. People need an opportunity to understand their job descriptions. There currently is not an existing comprehensive performance review system within the district, an employee evaluation system. This could be part of that and setting a high standard and attention to the JDs, which then leads to having accountability, which then leads to better performance and efficiency. And so internally, I think that the concern has been that audit will do the findings, but then administration needs to act on those findings and operationalize those findings and make the corrections and the efficiencies. And so having an ethics officer, I think, would, with these kinds of concerns that come up within the organization, we'd be able to identify where there are some missing gaps and holes within standard operating protocols, the control environment, manage risk, and then actually deal with performance evaluation. And so I think that's one piece. The other piece is I think in the recommendations as well that Mr. Edwards talked about was the ethics committee that reports up to the board. I think audit committee or the board, there's already an existing board committee. I can't remember which one you said it was, but so there would be board oversight that I would see the ethics officer like giving reports to, demonstrating efficiencies, giving number of complaints that come in, that kind of thing, and how we're working on our own risk management within the operations part of the district operations and organization, and then reports on the organizational culture and monitoring that. So that's kind of how I saw that working from the administrative side. I don't know if Mr. Chasen wants to comment on the Office of Accountability and Efficiency and how that might play into any ideas about how we might implement the code of conduct. The code of ethics, excuse me.
OAE?
Thank you, Chair Halloran. I would just simply say we all want to roll in the same direction. So happy to collaborate and cooperate on making sure that we're meeting the standards that all of us want to meet. I know it was actually your idea, Dr. Casilius, know the code, live the code, and that's where we all want to be. So happy to work with the administration, with the Office of Board Governance and the board to arrive there.
Do you have any follow-up, Director Zombor?
I did have a question, Chair O'Halloran, and I forgot what it was, and so I'm trying to.
Do you want me to
remember what
ask
it
my
was.
questions
Yes,
or see if
please, and
perhaps
then I'll see
Director
if I-
has any questions? Okay. I also was very curious about hearing the committee structure and just kind of from the timeline. I know, so we have the audit committee, and then this would be kind of a separate committee is what I'm understanding. And similarly, there is a relationship now between AFP and the audit committee, and then what I'm understanding is that there would be a relationship between AFP and the ethics committee. Kind of trying to understand when we would have something to react to as board members, because I'm assuming this is something that would need to come before the board for discussion or at least approval to create a new committee that's going to be kind of with that relationship. And so what is the timeline and then what is the board's role in that committee? So on the audit committee side, I know I keep going with my questions. I asked one and I kept going. I apologize. But on the audit committee, we have a board representative on that committee. So would the expectation be that there would be a board member that would participate in the ethics committee meetings? Just kind of like, what is the vision and what is the timeline for presentation of that vision?
So we need to step back. The ethics committee and the audit committee are really separate, okay? And don't consider them one committee, because from an audit committee standpoint, in fairness to the organization, you guys got a lot of work to do that the audit committee needs to wrap its arms around as it relates to risk assessment, organizational risk assessment, and just dealing with a host of comments that have come out of recent audits, recent events where the audit committee will spend a lot of time in generating what will be a very formative, very strong audit plan. The ethics committee is really separate and aside from it, and it should be treated separately, not really part of the audit process.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I was just using the audit example because the audit committee was just created. So I understand we're creating a separate committee, and what I'm trying to understand is what is the vision for like when this is going to happen and how the board would be involved. So as an example, we have now approved an audit committee that reports up through AFP. Would the ethics, I think I heard in your presentation that the ethics committee would report up through AFP. When would we see kind of what you're thinking for the ethics committee? What would the board's role be in the committee? Two separate committees, totally on board with that.
Okay, so ideally where we're at right now is we're working with MPS to kind of solidify when the rollout would be. There are a couple things that have to be worked out. For instance, the audit committee is really external. There's actually no one MPS on the audit committee, where the ethics committee is a little different. It's going to be comprised primarily of internal people. And so we haven't fully vetted out where we need to go with it, but we're working with staff to get that done within the next couple of weeks, actually.
Director O'Halloran, members, we just got this report, so we're going to be huddling, and the chief of HR just started. But this is something that is really important, I think, to the organization in terms of setting the standard, getting it going. So first, getting the policies in order, I think, was the number one first step. Second is, I think we'd need to consider, and I haven't had a chance to talk to President Zambor about, on the October readjustments, if we would create a new position for a chief equity officer. The thing I like about the chief equity officer is they're the owner of the work. And I also like that it could be more proactive rather than reactive in the organization, like somebody you can call and say, is this, an ethics concern, and I want advice on this thing. And I don't have all the answers just yet. We also have to put in place and figure out a performance evaluation system. We have to clean up our JDs and job descriptions. We have a compensation study that we're doing. So there's a lot of considerations here within these recommendations that we have to unpack. And I think what would be more realistic is maybe by end of year coming forward with kind of a timeline and plan for how we would implement the recommendations here brought by Rumpf & Associates this evening.
Thank you, and thank you for explaining what you were using, JD, because I'm like, Juris Doctor. I thought you were like, I just, when we use acronyms, different acronyms mean things to different people. So thank you for that explanation. Just before I move on to Director Reza, I did see, because I think I saw your hand up. During that explanation, I believe you said Chief Equity Officer. Did you mean Chief? So the title would be Chief Equity Officer or Chief Ethics Officer?
I don't know what the title would be. I think we just need to, it would be the person who's in charge of the ethics office. You know, one of the recommendations I brought to the board and you supported was the addition of creating a couple legal positions that we have. Could be that they do this role. And so it just, we just got these, so I haven't had a chance to talk to President Zombor about structure at all just yet.
Yep. Totally understand. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And then Director Reza?
Just a simple question. Can we get like maybe a rough draft or at least something, that other board members can see in the progress of this? Sent to us, just like a little timeline, a little rough draft at least.
Administration?
Director O'Halloran, Director Reza, I think I could bring something back by end of year for full implementation model. I just want to give our chief of HR some time to onboard. He's been here a week now and 2 days. So give us just a little bit of time and we'll get something to everybody to look at.
Okay. Should we put this back in the queue then for maybe December or January for an update on the progress? Did you have a follow-up, Director Zombor? Perhaps the question came back to you?
It did. Question about, okay, so the ethics committee, and it's okay if you don't know the answer to this right now, because I know this is all still being ironed out. So I'm kind of thinking about the State Ethics Commission, when they get complaints, oftentimes most of the work they do is actually in closed session. Since Wisconsin has such strong open meeting laws, do we anticipate that when these complaints come through in the ethics committee, because right now the audit committee is an open meeting, is this something that typically would have to be discussed in some type of more confidential setting, or is it something that would be anonymous where you would say, we have this complaint or we have a concern from an employee, it's a totally anonymous employee, and then you talk about it and then they come up with a recommendation? Or is it talking about pretty specific personnel matters?
Administration?
Or does it depend on which route we go?
Yeah, you can't talk about personnel matters, so it's going to be anonymous. And then when it's brought up, the anticipation is that, similar to how you do the whistleblower right now, along those concepts, but you're going to have legal weigh in on how to implement this in the right way.
Okay. And then just following up on a couple, it might be helpful, the audit committee, we do have a reporting tool that we're going to be using probably for the first time next month. So we'll be bringing forward recommendations in October. So that might be an interesting tool to adopt something similar. If it works, we'll get feedback from AFP. And then also, do we plan on bringing the Code of Ethics to LRP next month, the legislation, rules and policies, our policies committee?
Administration?
Chair O'Halloran, Director Zombor, yes, if the policy is ready, we plan on bringing it forward, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any other follow-up, Director Reza? Okay. All right. This was an informational item, so with no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
Thank you. As a reminder, a meeting on the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies will begin shortly. There being no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned.